I have many different blades from various manufacturers. Take this Felder diamond blade, for example. On one side of the blade, there is an inscription and the technical specifications. Judging by the orientation of the teeth, this side is the front, and the blade should be mounted on the machine with this side facing the operator. Here are blades from other manufacturers, and in every case, the front side, which carries the markings or images, is placed facing the operator when mounted. In my 20 years of practice and experience with more than 50 blades from different manufacturers, this has been the rule. I have never encountered anything different. Let's see how things stand with the Dado blade from Felder. Here is the front side, and according to standard practice, the blade rotates clockwise in this direction. This is the back side. Look at how the cutting edge is positioned. Here's an example of what remains of a carbide knife when it shatters. And here's what happens to a new Felder table insert if the blade is installed incorrectly. I should note that I have glued it in several places until a new one is put in its place. This happened because the blade was installed in the opposite direction of rotation. If you have owned dozens of blades where the rule is the side with the markings is the front, you are very unlikely to think that it could be different here. Moreover, it should be noted that there are many knives here and the cutting edge does not protrude very high. It's not immediately obvious which way they should be positioned for cutting unless you study them closely and take a good look. Let's see what is left of the 4 brand new knives after the first start of the blade. As you can see, only one knife survived. Let's look at what is in the box and what important warning information comes with the blade. I don't have a technical background. My education is in finance, but my main strength is that I know how to read and dive into the details. Let's see what is drawn or written here. There is a schematic cross-section of the blade showing the direction of rotation. To be honest with you, I don't see any clear explanation in this drawing on how to correctly install the blade or how to tell which side should face the operator. Let's see what is written on this sheet. Is there perhaps some text warning me to be careful and to mount the blade with the unmarked side facing me instead of the side with the inscriptions? No. Unfortunately, there is no such warning. Let's summarize my experience with a new grooving blade. A brand new blade suffered critical damage to 3 out of its 4 knives during the very first run while trying to cut through a zero clearance insert. Imagine this. You haven't even started cutting material yet. You just want to make a slot in your new, expensive insert. And with the very first touch, you ruin both the knives and the insert. Having worked for approximately 20 seconds of its life, this blade then sat on the shelf for almost a month while I waited for 2 new sets of knives to arrive. I would like to raise a question. If I purchased a set of blades for approximately 800 euros, am I entitled to receive comprehensive and clear information on how to use this blade, how to install it, and whether there are any special operating methods? Should I not receive a simple, clear explanation and a warning? Second question, can I count on some form of compensation if the blade does not include exhaustive information on how to operate it and this leads to financial losses? Or perhaps, in such a case, am I entitled to a free replacement of the knives and the zero clearance insert, similar to a vehicle recall due to improper quality of parts or service? For now, instead of answers, I have the following. The purchase of 2 new sets of knives for approximately 50 euros and a new table insert for about 80 euros. I repeat, the knives and the insert that came with the set lasted about 20 seconds of their life. It would be good to get feedback and comments from people who have faced the same problem as I did. I feel like There are many such people. It's a pity that when I was researching how to work with this grooving blade, I didn't see a single review or a single warning from users online about such small but vital nuances. I am not claiming that Felder is wrong. Perhaps the diagram I showed is clear on how to install it, and I simply don't understand it. But let's assume I have a non-technical degree, or even no education at all. Is it really that difficult to include a warning with the blade that would be clear to anyone who can read? For me, this is completely incomprehensible and very frustrating. A company that makes great machinery and charges a lot of money for it could take a little better care to ensure that its customers get satisfaction, not losses, from using its products. I also have a second set of these cutters, and I must note that they perform excellently. It is just a shame that such oversights lead to losses and leave a bad taste after use. I want to share another story that is worth keeping in mind when working with Felder machines. The mounting seats on both the shaper and the saw are very tight. The shaper spindle and the spindle pins on the saw fit so snugly into the tools that the tools might not fully seat in their proper place. When working with spacer rings, you should monitor very closely whether the tool you are using has fully seated or not. In my work with the shaper, I have encountered several times a situation where a thick cutter did not lower all the way onto its seat. I had to move the cutter up and down on the spindle several times to get it to drop as far as possible. On a few occasions, I noticed that at the height I had set, the cutter was cutting higher than intended. This told me that the cutter had not seated correctly. I had to disassemble it and reinstall it on the spindle. Therefore, if you don't have the opportunity to raise the spindle to its maximum height to visually confirm that the cutter has seated, make sure several times that the tool is firmly set on the base and hasn't gotten stuck somewhere along the way. Here is what can happen when working with the saw unit. If, as in the case of a dado blade, you are using spacer rings, you must ensure that the blade has fully seated and hasn't gotten hung up on the spindle pins. These spindle pins are designed to eliminate any play as much as possible when working with blades or cutters. Because of this, they provide a very tight fit for the tools. During one operation involving the grooving blade, it came loose, even though I tightened it with sufficient force. In my opinion, this happened precisely because the blade had not fully seated and was not completely pressed against the flange. This led to the spindle pins bending. From the outside it looks terrible, of course. Fortunately, because they bent, the grooving blade itself didn't fly off, but remained on the shaft. However, these spindle pins now need to be repaired. They have been ordered from the service center, and I am waiting for them. So far, I haven't received an answer on how they will be removed and replaced, as they are seated quite firmly on the shaft and it doesn't seem possible to simply unscrew them. This will likely be fuel for a new video, as I couldn't find any information on YouTube about how this was done before. One more point. On the saw unit, it is extremely difficult to see if the blade has seated properly, especially if you are using many spacer rings. Check several times that the blade is seated and all play is eliminated. Otherwise, you might end up in the same situation I did.